Hello, book dragons, and welcome to Geek Out number 38, Regicide, the Completionist Chronicles, book 2 by Dakota Krout. We kept talking about how we wanted to get a timer to let everybody know that we were going to get started, and Pete managed to get that all together last moment. So yeah. Looking forward to talking about one of our favorite lit RPG series. And gosh, Pete, feels like we were just talking about book one, but it's been about a month.
That it has. Sorry, I was on the wrong profile for backing that off.
We got a bit of an echo there.
Yeah, I don't know where it's coming through for me. Too many tabs. I'll be back.
Alrighty then. So so it was just on our end. Okay, there we go. Back on point. Completionist Chronicles, book 2. So at the end of book 1, Joe overthrows the Mages College. The Mages were pretty much holding everyone back. We're not allowing them to participate in the war. But because Joe was one of the only individuals to read the terms and conditions, he was granted one free get out of contract free card, or however you want to phrase that.
Was able to break a contract without any contract based repercussions. It makes me really wonder what the power title gives.
That's true.
At the very beginning, where he's like, "Oh, is that highlighted or is that underlined?" Too late.
Yeah. Who actually reads those things anyway? There's lots of stories of people. I think there was one where like a guy actually read it, and the company's like, "Hey, if you read this, mail this in, and we'll give you like $10,000 or something like that." First person to do it. Makes you wonder how many times you've signed away your soul by just clicking accept terms and conditions.
Well, not only that, but they add a lot of legal lingo and jargon purposefully to trip you up, or you kind of need like a lawyer's degree to even be able to decipher it.
Yeah, or Google, one or the other.
Yeah.
So Joe breaks the binding contract, overthrows the Archmage.
Yep.
And that's where we end book 1. Book 2, he hasn't bathed since book 1, has the smelly debuff, finds out that he's getting charged extra for everything because he reeks. And he's been studying, staying locked up in his warehouse as the world around him progresses.
Yeah, he's devoting himself to figuring out more about his class because there's no knowledge about it.
Yeah, because he's the only ritualist, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Aside from Joe, the prologue, we pretty much get a glimpse into the monarchs and the human army, because it's pretty much a race war, right? Like it's humans versus the wolfmen. I almost said werewolves. The wolfmen. And his old party leader,
Tiona.
Thank you, Tiona. She went to apprentice or whatnot to the Royal Guards, right? So she's kind of like worked her way up the ranks, and humanity really doesn't have the resources or power to go start reclaiming villages or towns that they lost to the Wolfmen. So they decide to send one of the noble guilds. Um, were they the Wanderers? Is that
Yep.
right? The Wanderers Guild, Joe's and Tiona's Guild. They're going to send them to reclaim one of the lost towns for humanity. Um, and that's kind of the big plot point for book two, right? We have a
Yeah.
couple little side quests along the way. Um, and I know we typically try to go chronological, but I've been waiting for this moment to get to the end of book two where we can finally come out and say the universes are one, right? Like I remember the first time reading through this, getting to the end of book two, and there were a lot of those hints, which I know we want to get into. A lot of like, oh, hey, like, there are these bunnies, and there are these other little things and other names, and like, oh, the monarchs are
I
the
felt
same.
like we
Hang,
knew, but maybe. Yes. Officially, Cal signs it when he
yes,
says,
yep,
you guys have completed the tutorial.
right, yeah. I'm waiting for that moment for 2020 to be like, congratulations, guys. Pandemic, um,
Killer Hornets.
kill hornets, etc., etc. You've completed the tutorial. Now, welcome to 2020 point one or
Yeah.
whatever. And we get to actually get this year started. But yeah, that big reveal, and then all the Easter eggs and everything makes sense. You pointed out the bands of chaos that we saw at the beginning of book one around the core. Um,
The bunnies with horns that bash people are the bashers.
mhm,
The wolfmen, and I want to say it's either 4 or 5, or no, it's 5, where
yes,
the people, Tom's P Tom's group ends up,
his brother.
or is it Tom's brother? Or
Yeah,
Tom's
yeah,
brother ends up hunting the Amazonians, and then he signs a contract with Cal, pretty much saying, "Hey, you know, can I give you the power and show everyone who you really are, what you really are?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, that sounds great. Finally, I get to talk to the dungeon." And he turns
yeah,
him into the Wolfmen, and which is the whole Wolfman race here. And
yes,
then at the end of one, when they have the ritual that they end up, or that Joe ends up switching to attack the Wolfmen versus attacking the human population
yes,
and all that. Which this whole series, I, sorry if you haven't read the Divine Dungeon, but in the Divine Dungeon series, they kind of hint at one of our main characters is, comes from a different place and was banished, and we just get a glimpse of all the rituals they know. So in my
hmm,
mind, this whole series is in tribute to what could have been involved in the first one, in the first
yeah.
series.
Well, it's all connected, right?
Yeah.
And everything we learn at the end of 4 and 5, it kind of makes me wonder when Dakota really tried or
Planned on
decided.
ending it.
Yeah, because I don't have the published dates pulled up, but I remember I think book four and book one came out approximately around the same time. Um, maybe not. And then like book two of the Ritualist came out around the same time of five or something like that.
Oh
And
yeah, that's a whole side note, because we've been saying do the Divine Dungeon first versus
mhm,
doing this, and this is one of the few authors where I would say do it based off of publication order,
okay,
because it's a lot easier to connect the dots. Like Dale's going up against bashing bunnies, and
mhm,
that's what Joe's going up against, and it's a little easier to connect.
yeah.
A lot of the Easter eggs aren't really too far off, though.
it helps. It adds just that much more to the story to really understand and appreciate the lore behind it, and the rituals and kind of seeing, like you said, the Easter eggs um, in there. So yeah, yeah. And Peter and I are a little bit further in the series. He's gotten through book 5. I'm up through book 4. We'll do our best not to do spoilers beyond book 2, but there's a lot of similarities between the two series. Um, in Divine Dungeon, Dale has his first party that's already kind of like ranked up, right? He's the fishy in the F rank, and then he's got some D and C rankers that he groups up with, and then after he ranks up, he has to get his own party, right? And then here, book 2, kind of same thing for Joe. He now becomes the group leader, the team leader, and has to form his own party. And in a lot of ways, very much like Dale, we get this group of misfit toys, if you will, that just adds so much comic relief to to the story. Out of all the party members, who would be your favorite, Pete?
Well, I can't say really until the next book installment.
As of book 2,
As of
you're
book
allowed to change.
2, I really enjoy Bard for book 2.
Okay,
Just kind of cements the group, keeps it all together,
he
and gets the
does.
girl.
He does. Oh man, I'm. I feel like we're switching hats here for this. The female of the group, what's her name again? I almost said
Mm,
Rose, but now I got Divine Dungeon on the
yeah,
mind.
that's the other one.
Yeah, we have Jackson, who is a lot of fun. Alexis, um, she becomes um, the number 2 in the group, and yeah, it, a bit of adult humor, but got a couple laughs, especially at the end there in that fight scene.
Yeah,
She really comes out of her shell, which is a lot of fun. And again, there's that other similarity to the Divine Dungeon, right? Because um, we have one female in the party again, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then I'm trying to think what other similarities we got between the
Mm,
party members. The first 2 he recruits are Jackson and Bard.
yeah,
Jackson, one of the things that's really interesting about the way the stat mechanics work is based off the stats, it impacts your gameplay, right? And we later learned that Jackson min-maxed his stats, and so he minimized his charisma stat. So the game actually filters what other people say, and his charisma is then impacted based off that, right? Um,
yeah. And then same thing for what he says to other people.
hmm hmm So like he's just emotional, or intelligence is just you know bottom level, right? Like he completely misreads social interactions, all this other stuff. So he's a chiropractor in real life. So his skills get imported to the game and the system recognizes it. And so like he thinks that people are asking for adjustments and he's going around attacking people, right? So when Joe finds him, it's the guards are about to like attack him because he kept adjusting or giving them, chiropractic feels.
And I think that comes through a lot in the series because kind of like how Joe had the stinky debuff. He ends up, having to pay more for food, pay more for, the bath and cleaning the clothes and everything else. And there are a lot of interactions that happen that, could be based off of certain effects of the stats.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked a little bit about it in the spoiler-free review, but with the way that technology has progressed up until this point and just how much video games and things have grown, I hope we get to see a game MMO like this in our lifetime where we can just show up similar to Sword Art Online or something like this, where it just recognizes our raw ability and awesomeness. And it's like, hey, yeah, you may be level 1, but you know how to cook. So, we're going to recognize that and boost your cooking stats, or, you know how to do this, that, and the other. We're going to recognize your stats. Yeah. Yeah. I could go down that rabbit hole on how much things could change there, but we get our party of misfit toys. We don't get Poppy. I don't
Until
remember.
later. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Poppy. It's
Poppy.
like Popolopolis, Whisperfoot, or something.
Something ridiculous. Um,
We
but
don't
yeah,
get him until the instant dungeon. Just add water and betrayal.
yes, yes. So they go to reclaim that town pretty early on. It's Joe, um, Bard, Alexis, and Jackson at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much we get, Dakota, who's known for his puns, um, bear pun after bear pun after bear pun from the mayor. Oh, his name being,
Sir Barrington?
yeah, Sir Barrington of all things. And they're pretty much like, you guys abandoned us to deal with this crisis on our own. We don't want you, yada, yada, yada. If you want to go grind out reputation, which again, I really appreciate how they incorporate the stats and the reputation into the game, and how like that's even reflected between the players, which I thought is really cool. The way the system recognizes that. And they go around, and finally the blacksmith sends them on this quest to clear out his family mines, right? And I'm trying to think, they get to like 99% or something like that.
It's like 99.5%, but that's just another one of those introverts, experts, and expert introverts that they've got because they're all, very specialized.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, what's the lady's name again?
Alexis.
Where Alexis comes through because they're being stung to death by bees, and then
Mm-hmm.
she's able to, basically be stung to death, but she's able to concoct a poison that won't degrade the bee's poison and takes out all of them. And then they
Yes.
have the first rock giant that they face, where then Joe with his acid spray, which is good against armor,
Mm-hmm.
essentially takes him out.
Mm-hmm.
Then after run around for a little bit, they're all willing to give up on it, but
Man,
Joe's not, so he goes back to do the Grave Digger Requiem, which we got to see in 1 that he uses against the Fire Mage. But
oh
this is
yeah.
a bigger one on a bigger scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Jackson's so funny throughout that little dungeon crawl too.
Yeah.
He gets all excited about the rock giant or whatever.
Yeah, well, for both, because he's all like, exoskeletons, Joe. They have no
Yes.
bones. They can't be adjusted.
Oh yes, yes. And then the system recognizes him and gives him the title that makes him better at killing bugs or
Yeah.
something like that. It's like, oh, thank you, system. Um, so yeah, there's that dynamic there. Um, oh, and then later we find out, which it's another kind of nod to the Divine Dungeon with oh, how like words have power, right? And we see it with the quest, everything from Sir Barrington when they try to give him partial completion, when the whole guild actually shows up.
Hello. Yeah, so that's pretty unique. Essentially, it's kind of a weird thing because now that the guild shows up, Sir Barrington is like, I told you what you needed to do to come into the town with good reputation. You obviously
Hmm.
didn't do that. And
Hmm.
Joe's like, hey, you've been reasonable, but everybody else has been fairly unreasonable, and he starts laying it all out. And when he gets to the part about gold, he's like, wait a minute, we don't do that because they're essentially, I'm trying to think of a good way to describe it, but
It's like a
there's no
socialist,
currency.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a socialist society. They all help each other out, and the only coin they have is like the one coin that they got in payment for like services rendered or something as a
Yeah.
town.
For the inn or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then he breaks it down, and there's system generated responses for if you can't fulfill the criteria and you can't pay them the reward. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how we get the instant dungeon because he's talking about how someone offered to pay him.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's the blacksmith, and they go back and forth to, oh, it's impossible. Oh, it's not impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, because we're going on this rant with everything, it turns out that the ritual Joe set up ends up actually killing the final monster, which
Mm-hmm.
completes it and turns it into an instant dungeon.
Yeah. And we talked about this in the spoiler free, but this book does a really good job at breaking down gamer terms that people, with a lot of experience in video games understand, but they do a good job kind of like explaining it through dialogue where like the dungeon is instant and instanced, which means, several different things. Um, the creatures are going to be set to a challenge rating for the highest level party member. That is the instant portion. And the instanced version is where like as many parties as they want can go in, but you're fighting on your own, right? So it does a really good job kind of explaining some of those mechanics to help the less um, lit RPG, literate, experienced, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
Um,
it does good explaining it all the way around.
yeah. And this book had a good amount of kind of like combat and game mechanics in there, which I really appreciated. Um, Joe did spend a good amount of time kind of doing his own thing and studying, but we had the mine um, bit. We had some like basic
The
combat.
prison bit, or well, so I guess we had the basic combat, getting the
Hmm.
party together,
Hmm.
some basic or the mine bit for killing that off, the
Hmm.
prison bit for going through that dungeon crawl. We
Hmm.
had the whole, epic war at the end and the sabotage by the Silence Mage.
Yes. Yes.
We
Yes.
got to see the battle tyrant, the king, in action.
Hmm.
So yeah, quite a bit of that. Plus, we really advanced our main character because you know he's advanced his skills through his studies, and then he also gets a class advancement through his egg-shaped ritual hall.
Yes.
And they hint that there's only one left in the world, that it's hidden somewhere by the dwarves.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
from the Divine Dungeon series, we like the dwarves, or at least most of them. So,
Yes.
and maybe Evan will make his comeback because
Oh,
Evan the dwarf just like up and left, and they're like, oh yeah, he made so much money selling this mithril. He went off on his own little journey.
Yes, he can retire. Um, Real quick, those of you watching this live and watching it later, if you can hit that like button for us, it really helps with the YouTube algorithm promoting this out to other people. We'd greatly appreciate it. And yeah, thanks to everybody who's hanging out with us live for this event. Um, yeah, so the town basically gets overturned into this dungeon, and the Smith and Sir Barrington become bosses, right? Pretty much like cursed by the system um, for making promises they couldn't keep. And one of the things that I get frustrated with is when like you get main character immunity, or they're just like so overpowered that you know you don't have to worry about them getting in harm's way because they always pull through. Yet
Yeah,
they go ahead.
or for a lot of these lit RPGs, it's all about the build up.
Hmm. Yeah.
Which I mean, being a ritualist and being a scholar or a ritual architect. No, that's not what I'm thinking. Occultist.
Mm.
With the traits he has, it's all about the build up. He just learned how to make any spell into a ritual. Want to
Hmm.
hand a fireball to a warrior, give him the completed ritual. So that's where, as long as he, isn't scrambling to get everything together and can actually take some time. But the problem is he's divided quite thin because he's currently the Hail Mary squad for his guild.
Yeah.
And then, he's trying to figure out all his ritual stuff on his own.
Yeah. Yeah. It it was pretty interesting how he got there, because we see in the first book and a bit in the second book how, as much as the Wanderers, their success is related to him. His relation with the
Oh, he
guards.
carries them.
Yeah, like in an indirect way, right? Like his reputation, his healing, his ritualists, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone in the guild just sees him as the oddball, right? Like nobody wants to join his party, so he has to go out and recruit these misfits to help him out. He ends up quitting the guild for a little bit because Daisy, same name as his ex-wife, basically like abuses her power. Like acts like a drill sergeant, making him do push-ups and et cetera, just because he wants to go talk to the guild leader. And she wasn't necessarily in the wrong, because obviously, like the Wanderers Guild, the GL has so much going on. He can't just have every guild member come to him. You know, there's um
Oh,
there's a
they don't really
hierarchy for a
explain it
reason.
in this one, but he kind of talks about how the investors and just how the conversion, kind of like in book one, where we get the lump sum of money that Joe gets and the
Hmm.
conversion and all that. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of real world people. I think we get a slight hint to all of that, all the goings on with it, because
He talks
they
about it when they
or
hire the mages,
there's
right?
uh
He talks about the investors, like this,
or yeah,
the
he talked
ritual
about the
better.
investors, but I was talking about how the company has really ramped up their building their pods and getting their data
Yeah,
cores out.
yeah. We do get a little bit of that in book two, talking about how there's a wait and a backlog, but companies are getting priorities on technology and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah. But not quite as extensive as we get in later books, which, again, in my opinion, is a nod in the series' favor. A lot of people can get overwhelmed with the world building, and I feel that Dakota Krout did a really good job with book two, helping kind of like scale us into it, right?
Yeah.
The video game mechanics, how the MMO works, so on and so forth. But yeah, like A10 is stupid busy, so Daisy steps in and basically blocks him from going to see A10, like right when they're about to summon this like overpowered ritual building. And he very intelligently crafted his agreement when he joined the guild, where he was allowed to give 3 warnings, and that's where we get to see the levels of intricacy with the reputation, right?
Yeah.
Where A10 basically rushes out of a meeting because he sees his reputation start to drop and charges over to try to find um,
Joe.
Joe. I almost called him Dale because like this book really hit home for me how similar they are, all the way down to being lousy tippers. Um, Another similarity they have, but yeah. So then he pretty much quits the guild, storms off. Um, it kind of hints at the fact that the stats might be part of the reason because we get to see the discrepancy between
Or
like his
yeah.
intelligence and wisdom and dexterity
He
and some
had
of those
just
other.
hit the 50 threshold for intelligence and wisdom,
Mm-hmm,
and then he's able to kind of personify or give the rundown to why he felt that way.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And yeah, he ends up going back and he pretty much renegotiates that he is completely autonomous, right? Like he is
Yeah.
a guild officer, but in a way, he kind of has special treatment that he doesn't have a whole lot of responsibilities or managing anybody, which an officer typically would outside of his own party.
Which seems to be kind of common in a lot of books. And I
Yeah.
have yet to see a real world application of this. And I would love to sign up for something like that. But
Uh,
we're doing the Stormlight Archive, and with Kaladin, that kind of, is how that ends up,
I,
besides the point. But
I
yeah.
I've seen a couple real world applications back when I did restaurant management. There were a couple managers where they did well at some smaller specialized tasks where they could move them around, but didn't give them a whole lot of overarching responsibilities in management. But you play to people's strengths, right? And Joe clearly isn't a people person in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You see him struggle in the beginning with the social interaction with his misfit toys and the awkward silences and trying so hard to drag them out of their shell.
And then, kind of when they first enter the mine, and they're like, "What? Nobody brought a torch. I have dark vision." And
Yeah,
Jackson's like, "You're the party leader." And Bard just like goes off and gets stuff, and the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
weird dynamics between Bard being like, "I bet you didn't even know I was gone." Jackson being like, "Oh yeah, I didn't. Did you get a stealth skill?" And then, yeah,
Yeah, there's his low charisma coming into play again, right?
yep.
Um,
The one thing that is kind of weird that I feel isn't what I'm thinking it is. Sorry, sidestep. When he's in the prison and
mhm,
he's being essentially trained by the Spectre,
mhm.
and I, for some reason, was thinking it was supposed to be Kier Nelson because in the Divine Dungeon series, Kier Nelson
Oh,
essentially sees everything in black and white, and as is law, where if you have done something wrong, they will be able to see it on you. And that's what I thought it was because he's the one who crafted a spell that will allow you to do that. But I'm also under the impression he's the only one who didn't make it because, he's the guy who saves Cal as he drops him through the portal where, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's kaput, where the Master and Barry make it through with their oath, and then Regicide, which we haven't seen yet, ends up making it through because he is trying to transition into Eternium,
you said Regicide. You mean Xenocide?
or yeah, Xenocide.
Yeah.
Yeah, Xenocide transitions into the dungeon Eternium, which then is going to get absorbed by Cal and his ley lines. Anyway, sidestep. Yeah. So there are a lot of connecting dots.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by this book, we figure out, it might have been book one, that the god of hidden stuff, Uncle or Akal Tatum, or however you pronounce it, is
Yeah.
actually the master. And it
Yeah.
took me a couple times going through it, but the very end, the epilogue of Divine Dungeon, Book 5, Dungeon Eternium, is when they give Cal his name and they also give the master his name. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's like a one liner where you figure out that the master is actually the hidden god, which I
Yes.
thought was, pretty snazzy.
Yeah, I didn't initially catch it. A lot of the bigger Easter eggs are kind of like nodded at, and unless you're really attentive, you don't catch it. But it's kind of fun to look and try to figure some of those pieces out, right? Like there's Chandra, and she is a plant mage in the Divine Dungeon, and then Sir Barrington's um, god or whatnot is of like plants and growth and is female. Um, and then yeah, like Uncle Totem and just the journey with that character from being like the main villain for the
Oh,
first three books to savior in books like 4 and 5 to now he is the neutral god of, was it dark and water?
yeah.
Yeah.
The other one that was just phenomenal is, so this was the moment I realized that the Battle Tyrant King and Queen are actually the, oh, I can't remember the names, but of the human kingdoms in the Divine Dungeon series. The
So,
king and queen signed a mana contract with Cal, and Cal essentially decks him out where he gives um mithril like coating around them, and changes their body structure and embeds a crown and all this extra stuff.
mhm.
There's a line, or when the king comes out and the Wolfman King comes out, there's a line where they're basically like, I spent all this time with you, you were my
Yes.
best friend, this,
Yes.
that, and the other. And the only way it connects is because, sorry, in 5, the brother of Tom, who is it's not called a king, it's called something else for the people.
They're like generals, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
War chiefs.
War
Yeah.
Chief ends up talking to, I can't think of the king's name in Divine Dungeon, and
Henry.
they're Henry, and they're best friends. But
Hmm.
then Tom's brother, the commander, ends up killing all the Amazonians and gets turned into the very
Silverfang.
first. Yeah.
Yeah. Wolfman.
So, like, that is the way it's played out in the book. It could be like a separate thing because it kind of sounds like, oh, in this world, I spent more time, as much time with you as I did my family, this, that, and the other.
Hmm.
But oh man, once you connect the dots, like,
It.
oh my. And
Yeah.
I was a
Yeah.
little disappointed that they didn't start off with like the Wolfman going up against like the Amazonians, but maybe that's
Ah.
not a different race, because like dwarf and elf, it's like, okay, that's a different race, but human to Amazonian, it's like, maybe they're just really buff. You know, could be cultural instead of race.
It was one of the questions I had too, because yeah, like we don't see the Amazonians, or at least any history or lore in the
Not
first two
yet, but we're
books.
still just, because that's
Hmm.
when, in the first one, when the queen is explaining the noble guild quest, and how once they complete this version or this part of the game, and we have to defeat the other race, and then we'll connect to other races, and we'll have to pick one and then defeat more.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because my understanding is they don't humanity doesn't pick a whole race to side with. It's like the humans individually can pick which side they want to go on.
Yeah, similar
So,
to how people could be race traders and
hmm
get reputation with the Wolfmen.
hmm yeah, yeah.
And I can't say that.
No spoilers.
Yep, can't do it.
Zip
But
it.
yeah, there's a lot of great Easter eggs throughout it. A lot of advancement that happens. We get a chuckle where Aiton's trying to tell Joe that he's the Hail Mary squad, and he's like, "Hey, so you didn't find some secret whatever in a dungeon, this, that, and the other," and he's like, "Giant egg ritual hall." The last proposition I got from
Right,
my dungeon
right.
diving.
Able to be upgraded to artifact level. Like what more do you want from me? Like,
No.
come on, come on. And it really paints the picture of his relationship, right? Like, at the same time that everybody kind of like looks down on him in a way, A10 and everybody also expects him just to pull miraculous feats out from underneath his robe.
He's carried them the whole way.
He
Like, he's
has.
the only reason they had enough reputation with the guards because of his humanity and,
Hmm
being a medic on active duty. He healed everybody, got great reputation. He's the
Yeah.
only one who, freaked out the game, got his Jumplomancer to expert, and then
Yes.
spent his points to get to master, giving him the 2,000 that he lost when he left. He's the only one who, due to his hidden knowledge, was able to pull the instant dungeon out and get him a good start going into
hmm
the next place.
hmm
And like every possible alternative path advancement or different
hmm
things is all because of him, because they became a noble guild, which then the nobility unlocked select classes they can spec as, because he toppled the archmage, and now they're allowing more classes to be shown.
hmm
And yeah, like, and same thing with his old group member Dylan. Unlocking Bulwark is because he went with him to
Yes.
you know get the armor. Like, yeah, that's where we don't necessarily get like the main character immunity, because he does die and he doesn't have everything, and he's struggling to figure it out and work through it. But at the
hmm
same time, like, he's carrying them pretty hardcore right now.
His relationship with the guards is so good. He even called the guard captain daddy at one point in the book, right? I got such a chuckle out of that when he finds out his mom joined the game and is dating the NPC guard captain.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, yeah,
I can just see it now. You training those new recruits and me coming by after a quest or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. Daddy, daddy, I'm back from my mission. Uh, so funny, so funny. Um, it's going to be interesting to see more about kind of the thing with the Spectre and whatnot from the um,
Prison.
the prison.
Or not that one, but the psychomancy thing. The thing that got me is like he found the class trainer and they're supposed to be able to manipulate people. And,
Mm,
he ends up getting the class from his manipulation resistance, from understanding that the game influences his mind directly.
Right.
and there's someone in his party who looks into it and who kind of gets caught by the glare, and it
Mm-hmm.
hints at the fact that the warden up top, not the warden is the Spectre, the warden up top is pretty much, giving him commands and this, that, and the other. And it says, or I forget what it was. Oh, the warden's gone. And, now this is my prison or whatever.
Right.
And it hints that the crony has eldritch eyes or whatnot. So somehow he's either used his abilities and taken over someone, which is what the, you know,
But
psychomancy
it,
people do.
yeah, it's not the warden that was the dungeon boss, though. It was one of the guys in the side
Yeah, it was
prison.
another
Yeah, yeah,
prisoner. Yeah.
yeah.
But it was just one of those like, what's gonna happen here? Something's
Hmm.
about to go down.
Which is good. It gets frustrating reading a series where they just make more questions and don't give us answers. Where I feel like this series, it's well paced, right? I feel like for every 1 to 2 questions, we get answers. We get, one or two more questions to kind of keep us invested and along for the ride.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. We finally finished this arc where we're like, yeah, we've defeated and crushed the Wolfman race. You have just
Tutorial
completed the
complete.
tutorial.
Yep, yep.
What
Right,
tutorial?
right. WTF? Now,
But it does make a whole lot of sense because from the Divine Dungeon series, people are essentially at the level, or a lot of our main cast was at the level of the battle tyrants and the king and queen, where a lot of the people who we're dealing with now are, breaking over their 10-point threshold and being basic human beings. So,
yeah,
into the 50-point threshold,
that's a
there's a
good
lot of
point.
growth potential, and we know they're still around because they essentially signed a soul pact with Cal. So yeah.
Yeah, if you're trying to compare them to similar scaling, they're still in the fishy ranks by the beginning of book 2 and just getting into like the D ranks by the end of book 2, right? And while I'm going to disagree with you a little bit that I wouldn't say like a lot are at the battle tyrant level simply because like I'm trying to think like
Or I would
mages.
say that in regards to like other races, kind of like how we
Yeah,
had the
yeah,
Wolfman who was, could have obliterated anybody, but the only one who could stand up against him is the king.
yeah. It's a good point though, because aside from a couple of the other generals, we really didn't see any super overpowered wolfmen. I guess like they had a couple elites fighters that could take out on multiples. And I'm trying to think of the way they explained the scaling for Divine Dungeon. It was basically like a 10 multiplier every rank, right? Where, like a D ranker could take on 10 fishies
Yeah, up
and
until you get into the mage ranks, where then it's based off of the rarity of your class and all that.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, the final battle was a lot of fun, um, and everything that went on there.
Yeah, we get the only person we didn't get to see was Guess. Because
That's
we,
true.
through book one, it was a little sad that our main party got disbanded.
Mm,
Then in book two, it's like, okay, you made it up to me. You made another party. And then I guess I didn't think about it until you were mentioning it. It falls along with the Divine Dungeon route where first party is very organized and together and well-oiled machine. And then second
hmm.
party is, floundering around trying to figure stuff out. And that's where, the little life lessons from one, Tiona does well. And, she's appropriate for the position she ends up, which gets her their guild recommended for the quest
Hmm.
line. So I guess Tiona carried a bit, but it was mostly Joe. Anyway, we get to see Tiona come back and organizing and dealing with the people in the town that we take over who came back, and apparently the people who died regularly did better because the game worked on, removing the trauma and keeping them together.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, the people who didn't die as much were having more or different problems.
Right.
And then we got to see Knight or X Knight Master X, aka Chad,
Right.
performed the shot that took out the shaman mage guy who was about to wipe him out again.
Hmm.
We got to see A10, use his gather everybody's stats power because the
Yes.
scythe goes and takes out most of them, and then A10, holds the whole line. And then the couple spots I get through, we get to see Dylan, come up and do his bull rush charge to clear the top off again.
Good little meat shield.
Yeah. We didn't see Guess, but yeah.
And we got to see Tiona for little bits when she was on leave to come back and help out
Yeah, with her
the
help.
Wanderers. You're right. We didn't get to see Guess, which makes you
We got
wonder.
a nod towards Guess when Flopalopolis Poppy Whisperfoot dude shows up, and
Yeah.
then we get a nod where it's like, okay, this name was obviously designed to mess with people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which he is a friend of A10 in real life.
Yeah.
So their poor humor goes together. Um, one of the dots that gets connected thanks to Cal signing it at the end is when Uncle Tatum kind of like hints at the system, and you get to see the snarky remarks and the attitude and the feel of the system paying attention. And it's like, oh, this is Cal's humor and sarcasm coming through. Like, this is why the quote unquote developers, um, you know, game system or whatever messages are a bit over the top, because Joe continues to do stupid stuff and Cal enjoys calling him out and poking fun at him.
Though it does save his bacon.
It does save his bacon, but
Because someone managed to smuggle one of the cursed items from the prison
yes,
out, puts it on Joe, but because he's got a Baldy title, it bursts into flames.
yes. Gosh, there's just like so many good dry humor, sarcasm moments throughout the book that just make you laugh out loud. Like when the explosion at the end, when he loses his leg, but he manages to do like a flip into the building or whatever with
Yeah.
a skill increase because he did a flip with style this time.
You could
Um,
now become a pirate captain.
yes,
I
yes.
hop, Eileen, yeah.
Yeah, you now have the option to change your name to Eileen I Hop or Stumpy. Would you like to do that now? You meet the qualifications to become a pirate captain.
Yeah.
Would you like to assign that as your class? Just like, can you imagine? Like, they talk about the pain threshold that you feel in this game, and to, like that people are literally threatening to sue the game developers because of the amount of pain and everything. So like here you've just had your leg blown off and the game system is just like throwing this stuff at you. Um, yeah, yeah. Bit of warped humor there. Um, yeah, with the revelation of this being Cal, like like I said, so many questions answered, but then I just have so many more questions. Like, okay, we know that Cal's here. What about Danny? What about Grace? What about
Well, yeah. And the fact that, Danny's big thing was to be able to jump into bodies and take them over and, sidestep. I feel she'll kind of be like a Chandra, but
Yeah, I could see that.
at the same time, I feel like she's just sitting on her beach with her silverwood tree and Cal's hanging out in Dale's body, playing with Grace and doing other stuff.
Still, though, I mean, like, Cal gets bored so easily. If you
Well,
think
he can
about the
be multiple
time scale,
places.
like the time scale of the fact that this was when, the world had two moons and Xenocide managed to pull one into the Earth. And then, we got all the way up to the
Well,
equivalent of humanity at this point.
but in the first book, right when Joe enters the world and the lady's like, "Oh, welcome to the newly whatever world,
Mm,
Ardania,"
hmm
and then when you get the quest line from the Queen, she says there was a bunch of war and another power, Cal took over and put us in a stasis like sleep. We didn't experience time. We didn't experience any of this.
Okay.
And then they entered, reality or real world they've been here for 200 years, and it's now a game because he's taken each of the races and separated them and put them head to head against another race, and then
hmm
once they complete that, then they go on to do the next race. And I think there's also a line from Jake the Alchemist, yeah, when Joe does his very first ritual and Jake is like, whoa, I haven't seen anybody do rituals since the human and other races were elevated and separated and this, that, and the other. So,
Mm,
yeah, there was a lot of time. And I'm pretty sure that's when Cal was going on his whole like developing the world as it is. And he was probably still absorbing a lot of the powers from his ritual prior.
hmm
But yeah, they've
Yeah.
only been here for like 200 years and a lot of things have changed. And at the end of Divine Dungeon 5, they realize that when they use their magic, they can't recuperate it because Cal's too good at absorbing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that had to change. So there are some differences.
Or yeah, and that's one of the things that like this is kind of a tribute to the people from Divine Dungeon, but
hmm
it's a tribute in the sense of after the first apocalypse in a new era is somewhat relevant. Insert, pun. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Um, yeah. This series is a lot of fun. They officially complete the tutorial. Joe somehow manages to revive the king after the king slays Silverfang,
And then
um,
gets betrayed.
then gets betrayed and blown up. And then Joe somehow, without a leg, manages to do his crazy yoga poses and resurrect this ultra powerful being so much higher level than he is and
That
bring him
he
back to life.
also gets a specialty boon, his third eye looking noble stamp.
Yes. Yes.
And then he also gets revenge on the silence mage Reggie, which
Yes.
that's one of the humor bits that I really enjoyed. But each of the titles seems to have like a dual meaning, and it wasn't until I read into this book that I finally looked up what Regicide is, and it is the act of killing a king or being a king killer, and that happens. The Wolfman King dies, and
hmm
then they kill the human king, but he comes back, and then the silence mage is named Reggie, so Regicide, and yeah, is
Yeah. Yeah. You committed regicide.
yeah.
It's another one of Dakota Krout's signatures, right? Because you get that all through the Divine Dungeon.
Though I
Um,
didn't get a single Dakota. I guess he did stop
Mm,
it by 4 and 5, but and
that's
those other ones were
true.
his like first pieces of work.
I'm trying to think, yeah, if we had any fourth wall moments in this
I
series
think
so
it was all
far.
like dedicated to Cal. It wasn't. There was a lot of Easter
Mm,
eggs, but there wasn't. I didn't think I got any Dakotas.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
okay. It was one of those things that I enjoyed, but yeah, isn't super relevant.
To each their own. Um, I did make the connection as I was looking through the titles that all of this series begins with R's. So for the series, as far as like the titles go,
Yeah,
so
not
he
sure
likes his themes.
what that really is,
Yeah,
and that's why I keep messing up, and I keep wanting to call this the Ritualist series, but it's not. It's the Completionist Chronicles.
it happens with all series, and we did it with his last one, calling it the
Yeah,
Dungeon
Dungeon
Born.
Born versus Divine Dungeon.
Right, right. I mean, you say it, people know it. Um, yeah. Final thoughts. Did we miss any key elements in this?
Mm,
It's always hard to do these books justice in an hour to 2 hour.
I think we hit a lot of the points. I'm excited about the new group we got going all together. The fact that there's a lot of like potential to come moments, kind
Hmm.
of like after he got rezzed in the war, where he did the like knowledge Nova blast, and he now has information of how to get the battle tyrant, which
Yes,
I'm pretty sure no one can get it because it probably has something to do with like make the what is his name super altruistic lexicon, aka Cal, like you, or sign a binding oath or something, something, something. Yeah,
but the classes in a way are kind of like the tree or whatnot,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because you
We're at the
gotta
end of Divine
work your
Dungeon.
way up the path to unlock the next tier of class or ability.
Well, yeah, and that was another thing that uh Madame Chandra was doing at the end of Divine Dungeon that we didn't really get to see anybody else do. And then now that's the way it's got to be because of, changes in the world.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. A lot of fun, so much fun. Um, Planning to keep plugging away at this series. We kind of have a theme going where
As
we're
probably has first slot in the month.
yeah, we're kind of trying to be consistent. Last month we did the Completionist Chronicles, the first Sunday of the month. We did it again. If all things go well, if there's interest in the series, we're going to probably try to do this again first weekend of the month next month. Um, for our Brandon Sanderson fans, we've been working our way through the Cosmere. We got Arrow 1 under our belt. We're working our way through the Stormlight Archive up until we get to the release of Rhythm of War, and we tentatively have a theory crafting stream scheduled for the month in between. There's some interest there. Um, if you're interested, hop on our Discord server, let us know. I'm probably going to start doing some theory crafting there. I'm tempted to start reading the chapters that they've been releasing for Rhythm of War. I know we typically do audiobooks, but I might break down and make time to actually read through that when we get through Oathbringer at the end of the month, just to kind of keep moving along there. And then next week, I am super, super pumped that Peter is
Oh, yeah.
finally going to listen to Dune, which is like one of my top sci-fi books of all time.
Man,
I've
it's an old one.
It's an old one, but like he is considered one of the fathers of sci-fi for a reason. Like Star Wars. You read this book, you'll start seeing a lot of the similarities to Star Wars and like all these other famous big science fiction fantasy franchises. Like even Brandon Sanderson draws inspiration from Dune. Like it's up there for a reason. So super pumped to be geeking out over Dune by Frank Herbert next Sunday. We have a couple potential guests that we haven't finalized yet, but it's going to be a lot of fun getting into the discussion between a handful of Dune veterans and a Dune noob, Pete. He's got me schooled on a lot of
I
the theater
can't
RPGs.
spoil anything for it.
He can't spoil anything, but yeah, like I'm really interested to pick your brain on it because, like he's considered one of the legends for a reason. I know where you hold Brandon Sanderson and his skill set. So it'll be interesting to see what you think of Frank Herbert.
Well, I mean,
And
for the Star Wars, like I grew up, wearing out the VHS tape for Star Wars.
the what? Why didn't you just use it? Why didn't you just stream it
Yeah, I
on
know, right?
on Netflix? You old fart.
Oh man, I'm getting there where I can say back in my day.
Back in my day, we had to rewind. What? What?
Yeah, and we got a fine if we didn't rewind it before we sent it back.
What
Back
is
in the
this?
Hollywood video days.
What is this? Like you 3D printed the save icon? Like what is this, Dad? Like why? Like,
Why is it called hang up? I just click a button.
yeah, I just
Though I guess we never had, did we? I guess we did, but they were
uh,
still wireless. It wasn't like a corded, wired one.
yeah, they were still
Anyway,
pretty big. Anyway, we could go off on a tangent about how, we're getting
this
up
is a
there.
classic, and yeah,
Yes.
I can
Yes.
now say back. I have a kid now, so I can now say back in my day.
Back in my day. Good times, good times. Hey, thank you, Book Dragons, who made time to hang out with us during the live stream. We appreciate you guys. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Um,
Social distance.
don't lick any doorknobs. Come hang out with us to get your social interaction and your book clubbiness. And yeah, fear is the mind killer. Pete, you're going to have to let me know who says that in Dune next week. So yeah, thanks guys.